sometimes I think if you think too much into it and be like, what is the reason for this happening? Or what are the things that I have to learn from this? I think you overcomplicate life in that way. Your life is unfolding a story, but there doesn't have to always be a reason for it.
Yeah, and I think if you're thinking too deep, it's like, Confucius says.
Why did you choose a spoon instead of chopsticks?
Why did I chose a blue instead of the purple? Hello, I'm Sam.
And I'm Amelia.
Welcome back to Us Duo Podcast where we aim to build a better mindset for better relationships.
Yeah, this week on mindset, I want to ask, well, actually before I ask, so disclaimer, this is going to be a very intense for us. I think it's going to dig into some philosophy, point of views and thoughts. So please bear with us if we have some brain blocks. But I want to ask, do you believe that everything happens for a reason?
I believe it does.
I can fly. You think it does?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, for sure.
Why?
I feel like your individual life journey and experiences like that, it's like you have that tree and you've obviously made a decision to go with whatever you've done. And that's just a purpose that you've just followed essentially.
What's that got to do with the tree?
I fucking don't know, but it is.
The tree of life.
Yeah.
I also think that everything happens for a reason. I think I have different approaches to it. So it could be that fate, destiny sort of thing. Like you have a story and you're made to live that story. Who organizes that or how it happens, I don't know. Like I don't have an answer, but I think things do happen for a reason.
Can you elaborate a little bit?
That's my elaboration.
Very nice. Yeah, I think your approach is similar to me with a slight little spice to it. It is a little like when you actually think about it on a deep perspective, it is quite intense when you think about, well, all these things that we've done, all these choices that we made and why we're here now. Like that's pretty intense.
Yeah, because this is really weird and very random, but when I think very deep, like I sit by myself and I'm thinking, it kind of gets me to think like, how did I even end up here and how did humans form? And for you to be here and to live a life. And I even think about my life versus there's some people who are born into, say, a third world country as opposed to me living here in Australia. Like, something must have given me this purpose to be here in Australia as an Asian. Like something out there must have given this to me because there's so many different other people who walk different walks of life. So these are the things that I think about, which can get very deep and very complicated and there won't ever be an answer to it. But sometimes it gets me curious and thinking like how this has happened and who decides this.
Yeah, or have you ever wondered?
Yeah. So I think things happen for a reason. But say, for example, you missed out on an opportunity. Do you think that those also happen for a reason or do you think that's just natural occurrence of life?
When you miss an opportunity, I think that's a decision that you potentially had control of.
How?
Like, for an example, if you had an opportunity to go travel a country or you moved to a different country, and if it was a thought that came to your mind initially, so like, for an example, I thought about leaving the country and going to Canada to live, but I made a decision to not. Now, that's an opportunity that, I probably have missed. I probably would have had a totally different life going through that venture of doing so, but that opportunity was something that I decided to not choose.
But what if it's like an opportunity, like say you really love this artist. What's that guy that's in Australia right now? Matt Damon?
Yeah, Matt Damon.
Yeah. So say you missed an opportunity, like you were in the city and he was in the city.
Wait, that's not Matt Damon.
No, well, whoever. Someone's in Brisbane right now acting and everyone's going crazy. So say you were in a city, he was in the city and you missed him by 5 minutes. What are your thoughts on that in terms of everything happens for a reason?
Well,
like you're in love with this guy, you really wanted to see him and you would love and pay to go see him.
Yeah, okay. So just to clarify, it is Mark Wahlberg.
Close enough.
Okay.
Both starts with M.
Yeah, if I really loved him, respected him as an actor, yeah, I think if it was something that it was an opportunity to meet him, but I missed him, then it was just, I don't know, that's just one of those
Like,
moments.
it is what it is, or is it, oh, well, I can still see him another time?
I think it is what it is in that certain situation. So like if I was meant to meet him, then I would have met him. That opportunity would arise if I were to meet him. You know what I'm saying?
No, I agree with that. I'm the same. It's like if I were to meet this person or meet my favorite celebrity singer, my paths would cross if the time was actually meant to be that time. And if it isn't, I don't really think too much about it. Like I might be disappointed, be like, oh my God, I just missed out. But I'm not going to be like, oh my God, the universe didn't allow me to meet this person because of blah, 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 blah. And I have like the worst luck ever. That's not how I think. But to think into another level, because some people actually think that there's a higher power, so like a God or a Buddha or some sort of spiritual element that has plans for us. Do you think there's that type of thing? Like just some sort of higher power? It doesn't have to be like a God or anything, but you think there's a higher power
I don't think so.
spiritually?
Yeah, I don't think me personally, I don't look at life in that perspective or that light. But respect to all the people that do.
But then my question is, who writes the story for you then? Who or what writes the story for you then?
That's a bloody great question. A question that I always ask myself, but who knows? It's just one of those things that happen, right?
But have you ever wondered?
I definitely have, but I've never really thought that deep in that perspective.
I have another question, a deeper question. You know how there's those dramas or those stories where there's a multiverse or something happened in your past life that affects your life now? Do you think that that also has an effect on your walk of life in this current point in time?
If there was a universe, a multi-universe where there's like another me in a different life verse, I reckon that'd be pretty interesting.
But do you think that's true or it can happen?
I don't think we have.
But do you think your past life has an effect of your life today?
Potentially, yeah. And this is something that my mum, like the Thai culture, talks about frequently is with religion, they feel that your past life is the dictator of your current life. And they talk about like how you are is based off what you've done in the past. So for example, if your present life, you are living rich or you're living lucky, then your previous life, you were living a total opposite of that. And they say that your
Opposite
character,
as in they didn't have a good life.
yeah, that's right. So you'd be like a peasant or a poor person or something like that. So essentially, your life is dictated based on whatever your past life is. Now, in saying that, they also talk about, and this is what I've heard from my mum, so I'm not sure if this is holistically the same thing for everyone, but my mum also says that how you live your life now is also a dictator as to what your next life would be. So good or bad karma sort of thing.
Rolling effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of believe in that. I don't know if that's influenced because of also upbringing and things that I've seen and how some sort of Buddhism might talk about this sort of thing, but I sort of believe in it as well. But how much I look into it, I don't really look that much into it.
Yeah, and I think the important part is we're not talking about religion as such, it's really just
it's past life, reincarnation. But, okay, another question. So there's a theory, law of attraction. Do you think we attract what we think or what we believe? So if you think more positively, do you think you attract more positive things? If you really think or believe that you will become something, like you'll attract it?
I don't say 100%, but I would say 80 to 20. So 80% yes and 20% no. I think if you, like there's always these quotes and memes and stuff like that going around where you say if you think positively, if you put yourself in a positive environment, then you're going to enhance and hone that positivity. I believe in that. Now, in terms of attracting what you're thinking, I think if, like you always hear about people saying, look, if you work hard, you play hard, then you'll reap those rewards. I feel that that is somewhat true to some extent, depending on your situation. But I've seen the other side of that where, yes, you work hard, play hard, but it doesn't reap the rewards that you think you would get. So that's why I say it's an 80-20 split.
Yeah, so I sort of believe in that law of attraction, but I think the law of attraction isn't just you purely thinking like, I'm going to be the very best. It's more like a mindset thing. It's because you're attracting positivity or you're attracting your goals and achieving something. And because that's in front of mind and that's your priority, you actively work more towards it. So that's how I see the law of attraction. People who actually study this whole law of attraction thing, please don't at me because I don't actually read into this, but this is just my personal thoughts of how this works. So it's not purely just thinking, I'm going to be rich, and then you just think that and you think you're going to become rich. It's, I want to be rich, or I want to be wealthy. And then because that's front of mind, everything that you do, every action that you take and your things that you do in your day to day works towards this intent and purpose so that you can attract being or becoming wealthy. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, and keep in mind, everyone's perspective of the word wealthy and rich is within your own definition as well.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, just
but that's an example of how from going from one thought to attracting it, that's what I see of that attraction. So we attract what we think. I believe, yes, in a sense of when you believe it and you're actually working towards it, it can. But in a sense of everything happens for a reason as well, in that law of attraction or attracting what we think. I think that's also true because when something happens, say a negative or not so good event, and then you start thinking negatively, you're like, oh, that was a shit event, or how come it happened to me? That attracts more negative, and it's not because you're attracting it, it's because your mind, it's kind of like when you buy a new car and you bought like a red Toyota Corolla, and then now everywhere you see is a Toyota Corolla because you just bought that car because that came into attention for you. So the same concept on this, say a negative event happened, you're thinking negatively, and now every other event, whether it's small or big, you'll see the negative aspect of what happened in the situation. So that's what I see in terms of attraction and what we think.
Yeah, and I am exactly somewhat similar. So if your mindset is set on a particular position, then everything around you is going to be positioned to that particular mindset in how I see it anyway.
And then in terms of also believing in everything happens for a reason, I also think it does, but also it's another mindset thing where within that reason, like whatever happened or whatever opportunity you missed, I like to see the good in that and seeing the lessons in that, which we'll also talk about later because there are some philosophies around this. And that's how I see everything happens for a reason. And that reason is because I choose to find the good in it. So even if I went to a really shit networking event, I may have met someone that I wouldn't have met if I didn't go. And maybe I didn't actually take an outcome from that purpose of the event, but I met someone that might become a good friend, or I figured out some new restaurants that I really wanted to try, but I wouldn't have known if I didn't talk to these people here. So it's seeing the good in the small things.
Yeah, no, that's something that I actually agree with in terms of lessons, because I always harp on about this as well. Now, I know it's a little bit different in terms of the conversation, but in terms of seeing the lessons, every opportunity that has happened, I see it more of, well, this has happened for a reason. And it's really just taking that experience and that journey as part of your lesson in life. And yeah, there are times where I'll think about it and I would be like, and I would also feel like, fuck, what if I did something different? What would I have done, or what would have I experienced or met? That's something that I always think about. But in terms of if there's an underlying someone, like, you know, those puppets where they have those strings, I don't see it from that perspective as, yeah.
A quick interruption. We want to thank all of you who have been supporting us. And if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube.
If you found any of our episodes helpful, please share to your friends and family, as it would help us grow.
Now back to the episode. Yeah, so digging deeper into this, everything has a reason. We researched, and there's actually different concepts and different thoughts and perspective on this, which we found really interesting. So there's like the Eastern method, like the Taoism, and then there's the Western where it's the cause and effect. And then there's also just other people that we read in terms of on Reddit, which we found interesting. So we'll go through some of these.
Yeah, so Taoism or Taoism is something that I actually believe in the most, because from the ancient Chinese, they actually practiced the perspective of going with the flow. Things happen for a reason, so just let it be. And that's essentially what I approach it in some way. Things have happened for a reason. Yes, do I have control of it? Well, maybe, depending on what my choice was at the time, but it's realistically just taking that journey, that experience, and learning from it and expanding from that perspective.
Yeah, so how I see this explanation is they see, yes, there are some aspects that things happen for a reason, but there's the other aspect that things just happen and is it really? And you just accept things as they are. So I also believe in this because, yes, although I did say that I do think sometimes there are things that happen for a reason, but at the same time, some things just happen because it happened. There may not be a reason for it and you just let it be. Because sometimes I think if you think too much into it and be like, what is the reason for this happening? Or what are the things that I have to learn from this? I think you overcomplicate life in that way. So I think there are aspects where I believe in this Taoism where accepting that life is just moving as it is and your life is unfolding a story, but there doesn't have to always be a reason for it.
Yeah, and I think if you're thinking too deep, it's like, oh, Confucius says.
No, it's just like you tripped over a rock. If you're always going to be like, what is the reason for me tripping over this rock? Like, like what is this teaching me? Like, yeah, it could, if you really think about it, it's just teaching you how to walk properly or teaching you to actually check the floor before you walk. But I feel like that's just overcomplicating it. If you just treat it as it is, you tripped, cool, move on with your day. Because I think when you think too much into it, that's just too much.
Yeah, it's just complicating things way, way, way too much.
So the other one is the Western one, where it's the cause and effect. So there's actually two, the cause and effect and also principle of sufficient reason. So this is the one that sort of is what we just explained, like something happened and you're trying to justify it with a reason. So everything that happens is from a cause or it has an effect to it. So this is what Westerns believe. And it's a way to find meaning and make sense of life. So sometimes, yes, I partially agree with it, but then sometimes I don't. Like, again, for that reason is like you don't always need to seek an answer. It's kind of like if you're talking to someone, someone's asking a question or some conflict happened and you're always trying to find an answer. Sometimes you might get annoyed because, or that person might get annoyed. It's like, why you keep asking questions? Why do you keep trying to find an answer from it when sometimes you don't need an answer? Like it just is what it is. So like sometimes in a bigger sense, like opportunities like work or you missed something or you didn't get a promotion, like yeah, maybe it happened for a reason because it means that you need to keep working on yourself. But if something's in your simple day-to-day life, you don't always have to have an answer.
Yeah, I agree. I've particularly feel with this philosophy, it's a little bit too much if you think about it too deep. And like you said, just for the basic everyday things, it's very much like, well, hang on. These small things like I picked up a cup to eat or
why did you choose a spoon instead of chopsticks?
Why did I chose the blue instead of the purple? And it's like, oh, well, hang on. It's just a spoon. Your purpose is to eat, or there's no real reason as to thinking too deep as to what it is. But in terms of like your choices, if we're looking at, okay, I made a choice to do something or I made a choice to seek a particular industry or change industries, those things are more on a choice.
And it has an intent or a purpose behind it.
Yeah.
But in saying that, there are some good aspects of thinking this way because I think it really does help you build a good mindset. If you're trying to look for lessons or you're trying to look for opportunities within this situation that happened, it does help you build that better mindset because you're trying to see the good things that happened from this occasion or this situation.
Yeah, every experience is really a lesson. In terms of how you look into what that experience is, that really is a fine line as to, okay, well, is it really worth looking really deep into it?
So another philosophy is something that we already touched on. So the spiritual side of things. So the people who believe that there's a higher power out there, there's someone or something out there that has plans for you. So I don't know if I really believe in the spiritual in terms of higher plans, but I do sort of have some sort of belief that there is something out there it's like that kinetic energy is like bringing or pulling you towards something. So there's something out there that's creating that, but whether that's from someone from a higher power or someone with a higher power, I don't know. Like I don't have an answer for it. And something that my cousin actually told me, because she watches a lot of documentaries, which I found really interesting. And she was saying how everyone is actually made from, I think she said stars or something from space. And there's a whole documentary on how this and everything is formed. So I found that really interesting.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool because that's like that drama we watched, the one that you're rewatching now, because it's based off the stars, like your position in your stars. They say that every
Constellation.
your constellation. So every human is a star, and when you're born, timeline, etc., like that, and where you appear on that constellation, that dictates your life and your journey and your everything, basically. And it's really interesting when you look at it from that holistic perspective because it really defines and pictures out that person, their character, everything like that.
Yeah, and this actually brought back a memory. So I don't know if you have heard, but we actually did an episode with Jen. So she actually looks at human design, and that is something that you read, and it collates a whole bunch of different types of reading. So there's like the Chinese horoscopes, and there's like the Indian side, and general horoscopes, like all of that together. And you have to be specific with your time and the date that you were born and where you were born, location, and it brings out like this whole human map of you as a person, your personality. So I found that really interesting, and that kind of just reminded me of that. So there are people who actually really look into that, which is really interesting. So yeah, I think all of this has an effect, and also has an effect on how you think of situations and if things happen for a reason or how these reasons occur.
Yeah, and in terms of that higher power thing, I don't know if this is related to that story that I was talking about before about my mum telling me about the how Thai people
past life.
Yeah, how Thai people look at their past life and how their present life will dictate their next life. And I think that's a good example because it's very much like in terms of your present life, how are you controlling your life? What are the opportunities, the good and the bad deeds that you're doing that pictures and defines your next life in a way where it's very much like, hey, you've got full control of painting your next life. So do good as much as you can.
I think it's also more immediate sense. It's not your next life. They talk about karma as well. So if you do good will come back to you. And that is also how everything happens for a reason. And some people might link it as I got this opportunity is because in the past I helped out or I volunteered or I did a lot of donations here and there. And that's also another thing, how some people might see like a spiritual or that sort of sense in a form of karma.
Yeah, and a little bit of a side topic, but it is interesting when you look at how important life is in a perspective of how there are people who do a lot of good and they end up passing away very early. And you look at the guys who are very much the bad, they do a lot of bad stuff and they seem to live such a long life. And when you think of it from this perspective, you think, well, it is quite interesting when you look at it holistically and on a perspective of, oh, this person has done so much that is positive, good karma and whatnot, but they end up having such a short life.
That is really interesting. And I don't have an answer for that, but I have also thought about that as well.
Yeah.
So going into other people's thoughts and opinions around everything has a purpose or everything has a reason. Everything happens for a reason. There are some people on Reddit who actually said, so this one person, this is the first person, he said that everything happens for a reason if you decide that it does. So this person is saying that you think there's a reason because you decided that there's a reason for it. So I think this is quite interesting because it comes back to mindset or trying to find a purpose or a cause or effect that this lesson or this experience is trying to teach you. So this person has a really interesting approach where it's like, it's not a yes or a no. Like, does he believe that it happens or it doesn't? It's just because you believe that there was a reason means that there was a reason for it.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And this is something we've briefly talked about before, and that's more on the perspective of your mindset. So if you're creating a positive mindset, then everything around you will be positive. But yeah, like this particular person has mentioned, it's really just creating a reason for it to occur because you believe in it in your own self.
And sometimes it's a good thing because if you are finding the reasons for it, then it kind of brings you to draws out the deeper meaning within what's happening in that situation. But at the same time, like we said before, it's not looking too deep into it, but then also sometimes choosing to find opportunities within these certain things that happen. So I think it needs a good balance.
Yeah. So this second person has mentioned that reason is essentially a definition depending on it's essentially your own subjective definition on the word reason. So depending on who is asked, whoever answers, that's your own subjective understanding of what that reason is.
Yeah, because like we mentioned above, there's different types of philosophy. And if you're asking a person who does believe in spiritual, or if you're asking a person who believes in Taoism, like their answer for finding a reason like that happened because of this occasion will be different. So this is also really interesting and does really tie back into all the different philosophies that we've explained.
Depending on how your approach is or what your personal understanding of what something has happened, that's really up to your own interpretation.
Yeah, and the reason could actually just be everything happens for a reason, but you might think that is just random. Like that's the reason. There's no purpose behind it. There's no actual answer behind it. And then some others might think that there actually is a natural cause to it. So yeah, that reason is very different from person to person.
Yeah. And then when you actually look at it from a deeper perspective, it's actually quite interesting when you look at other people's perspectives or philosophies. It just gives you an alternative way of thinking what others may think.
Yeah, there's other research that lines out this everything happens for a reason. So some say that it has a good effect, some say that it's a bad effect to not effect, more like a good mindset versus bad mindset. And the good in terms of thinking this way is really your thinking and looking into the positives and the purpose and the opportunities in these situations. So it reduces you feeling sad or disappointed or angry if you lost an opportunity and you really just look into the positive aspect of it.
Yeah. Another one that flows on from being good is more on the factor of the sense of trust. So trusting the fact that whatever the flow is, whatever that has happened, that's just essentially flow of life.
I think these good and bad definitely is more mindset. So the bad is dismissing the pain and suffering. So if you're like, you missed out on this and everything happens for a reason, you're like, it is what it is, then you're dismissing what's happening. You're not really working to improve or try something else or do something from a different angle, like tackling from a different angle. So if you think about it, and you're like, everything happens for a reason, and you're kind of like an oh well approach, then you're not really improving yourself or working towards something.
Yeah. And following from that is really just discouraging people from really honing their mistakes or owning on their mistakes and the decisions in life that they've made.
Yeah, so not taking responsibility or taking action in their circumstances. So after this whole brain breaking explanation, do you think that your thoughts on everything happens for a reason has changed? Or has anything else added to your thought process?
I don't necessarily think so. I feel like I'm quite holistic when it comes to this conversation, only because, like I said, my mum talks about the Thai experience and how they look at karma, bad karma, things like that, and how does that affect your present to your next life or even the previous life. So I kind of really see there are certain things that may happen in your life, and it's just really taking the flow of that. So things have happened. It may be a lesson. It might not be a lesson, but that's just what it is.
I think you guys may have already noticed I sort of changed my words over time throughout this episode. I did start off by saying, yes, I believe that everything happens for a reason. But after reading through and actually digging deeper and actually rethinking my actual true thoughts, I think it's a yes and no. Do I believe that everything happens for a reason? Yeah, and the bigger stuff, opportunities or mistakes or something that you should have done but you didn't do, these do teach you a lesson, and I choose to break that apart to think of what I could have done, what I can do better. So the reflection part. So yeah, everything happens for a reason because it's a lesson and it teaches you something, and I like to believe in that because then I can see the positives so that I can keep moving forward. But at the same time, I say no because not everything needs an answer. So going into that Taoism or that belief that accepting that there's a flow of life and accepting that things are the way that they are. So I have a bit of both, like a hybrid approach. Like yes, everything, yes, things do happen for a reason, but then sometimes it's just life. Like life is just throwing you colors, and you're just appreciating these different colors that are being thrown at you, and you're painting these pictures in your life and experiencing it.
Everything happens for a reason.
Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, let us know in the comments or our DMs if you look at everything happens for a reason from a different perspective. Because I think this conversation is an interesting one, because when you think about it from a deeper perspective, especially from a philosophy perspective, it really does open your eyes as to how others think of things and how others define things.
And even just the 2 comments from the Reddits is already an eye-opener. So if you have any more or your own approach, or do you believe that everything happens for a reason, yes or no, maybe hybrid, let us know in our DMs, because we would love to know. And this is stuff that we're curious about. And yeah.
Thank you for joining us, and we will see you guys in the next episode.
Goodbye.
Peace.